Welcome to Real Time Recorder, everyone. I'm Zeus Carol from CK Research, and I'm here again with Dave Michaels from Talking Points. Dave, it is December already. Can you believe it's December already? Happy holidays, everyone. This will be our last video of 2022. And, being the prognosticators we are, we should take a look at some of the trends we saw in 2022 and see how they will continue on in 2023. So I'll lead us off, Dave. Actually, okay. I think, one of the big buzzwords we heard this year from every one of the communication vendors was the word platform. Now,
I wanted to tell you that Talking Points is becoming a platform company now.
It is, yeah. Well, that's good. I am too, because everyone's becoming a platform company. And someone asked me the other day, which of the communications vendors are platform companies? And my answer is none of them, because I don't think they really understand what a platform is. To me, a platform isn't just bundling more apps into your app. It's actually putting the foundation in place to allow others to build on your product. And so when I think of platforms, iOS is a platform, Windows is a platform, Office is a platform, Zoom and WebEx and Ring, those aren't yet. I think the capabilities are there. And I think it's important these vendors have their sights set on that, because if you think of any big software vendor and any big SaaS vendor, right, they're all platform companies and they all have massive ecosystems. So when a vendor tells me we have 100 companies that interface with us, my response is, whoop-de-doo, contact me when you have 1,000 or 5,000. What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, based on your definition, I have to rescind my comment. Talking Points will not be becoming a platform vendor. But I do want to say that, it's the N word, like you said, a lot of vendors are talking about it. To me, what they're saying is that they're saying that they have lots of APIs, and they want you to use their APIs to build your workflows and your applications. And so, the idea when I started, I don't know when you started. When I started, the only thing that was a platform was an operating system, and then it became, somehow Excel became a platform, and because people were building apps in Excel. Modern days, the browser is certainly a platform. Teams has become a platform somehow or another, because they have at least one application built on Teams now. And so, but to me, I kind of agree with you that APIs are not new. And if anything, CPaaS is a very confusing sector, which is, the heart of APIs in the communications industry. Most of the CPaaS players are not profitable. And you look at Twilio, they're even kind of moving away from being a CPaaS provider. They're moving into this CDP world and marketing world. The billing models are hard. Cisco, for example, has got a rich set of APIs they've got with their IMI Mobile, but they're not doing a billing model. And so you can build applications for an internal audience, but you really can't build them into your new applications for customers. And so the billing models are tricky. And so it's a lot of noise, and every vendor's a platform vendor, but the trend will continue.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move to a second theme, or second trend coming out of 22 is the Metaverse. I cringe every time I hear the Metaverse. It's kind of like platforms. Yes, it's everybody has a different definition of it. I believe we've already hit peak Metaverse in 22. I think 23 is becoming a bit of a snide and chuckle every time someone says it. I think probably by the time we get around to 2025, it'll be an absolute joke. It'll become real maybe around 2035. But what Zuck is talking about with everybody having virtual hardware, that's going to have to get a lot cheaper, AR, VR hardware on their eyes. So the hardware's still too expensive. Meta has spent in 22 almost $10 billion, not to mention they laid off 11,000 employees. So it's not really working out very well. And even Zuck is saying it's going to be a long time. He's talking 10 years. And, you can't keep on spending $10 billion a year to make this thing happen. So I think it's overhyped. It's not particularly useful. And I'm kind of anxious for this whole thing to go away. What are your thoughts on Metaverse?
Well, I do agree that nobody wants another virtual version of Dave Michaels. So, in that regard, maybe it is overhyped. I do think, though, that Metaverse is here, and it depends on your definition. And so, if you believe that digital twins are simple metaverses, or or virtual environments than actually have them, right? NVIDIA's been huge with their Omniverse, using digital twins that obey the laws of physics to test self-driving cars, to test, objects in motion. Avaya did that little demo with the city of Dubai. They built a digital twin of all their city services, right? And so there are some elements, I think, of virtual worlds that can actually allow us to study the physical world. In fact, I believe one of the announcements NVIDIA made at GTC was they're working on building a digital twin of the whole universe, which I'm not, they'd sell a lot of GPUs, I suppose, if they could do that, right? But to me, that's as legitimate a use case of the metaverse as there is. The whole Zuck model where I got to wear a headset all the time and I'm going to live in some Second Life type of environment, I don't really believe that's coming anytime soon. But I do believe the use of digital twins to do building design and manufacturing, and even being able to study, how objects move with, stadium design and stuff like that, I do think that is legitimate. So I think
you make a really valid point, and so where does what we do today, maybe designing an air wing, a wing in a air tunnel, where does what we do today, moving into virtual, become metaverse? And then, some people would say a basic video meeting is a metaverse because we're virtually together and all that stuff. And so where you draw that line, I think, is tricky. To me, it's really more around AR and VR and the killer app that always comes to mind, which is, I think, wrong, is video gaming. But it's not going to be video gaming that brings us the metaverse. It's actually going to be meetings, if anything. And we're already seeing some good progress there. Just recently, we saw Google come out with a high-end 3D video meeting. Cisco's got a 3D WebEx version of 3D modeling version of WebEx. And then who was it? The other one, Google. There was somebody else that just announced a high-end virtual meetings, but I think meetings will actually be the one that has the ROI that actually brings us this technology. It's going and using goggles and whatnot. But I think we're still a ways from, to your point, what Zuck is describing, or what Zuck is selling.
And so the third trend I want to talk about, Dave, and we certainly had an explosion of AI this year. And I think one of the trends I noticed about it was there's a certain standard level of AI that everybody has. And frankly, I'm getting tired of people demoing noise block. I know you have noise block. Everyone has noise block. Stop demoing it, right? But there are a bunch of use cases now for AI that are starting to solve problems that you can't just kind of over-process or manufacture your way out of, right? So they're solving really hard problems. And things like, transcription, is nice, but meeting notes is better, right? And things like that. And I'm pretty excited about AI being used not just to improve the meeting experience, but the pre and post meeting experience, because I think everyone does meetings pretty well today, but we suck at pre-meeting and post-meeting. No one's ever prepared. Everyone's always late. Everyone's looking stuff up in the meeting. And then after, we never remember what was said. And even though we get transcriptions emailed to us, we don't really ever look through them. And so if AI can be used to almost be like, if you had a personal assistant be able to whisper in your ear all the time, right, maybe you wouldn't need, some kind of AI-based functionality in the meetings, but I don't. Right, and you don't, and so I think AI, like I said, is starting to solve some of those really hard problems, and I think that's going to be really interesting to see how these meeting platforms evolve over time.
Well, I think there's three important notes on the progress of AI, and one is it's getting tremendously better, and we just recently saw what's it called, the Chat GPT that came out, and that's really a game changer, right? And so we're gonna see these game changers happening more and more often, and I think that's really, really very important. Second point is it's actually beginning to work. I find myself, maybe in 2021, every time I got referred to some sort of chatbot on an 800 line, I'd be screaming operator representative for the next 20 minutes until I finally broke through the system. But I find myself now willing to give it a shot because I've got a better idea of when it's going to work, what kind of issue I have, and if it can be automated, and what the likelihood of that is.
I'd actually like you to
I actually appreciate it.
I'd actually like to see you live stream yourself screaming operator.
Yeah, but I actually appreciate it when it offers me a self-service thing. In fact, I get upset when it's not. I called to activate a credit card, and I got a live operator. It's like, what the hell are you doing answering the phone? I was pissed off about this thing. So I'm actually finding myself willing to give automation more of a shot because it's working sometimes. And the third point that I think is really important is that AI still has a lot of limitations. And in many cases, we're giving it a little too much leeway because we're trying to automate or we're trying to cut costs. And there's just a lot of things that it doesn't work. It's not there yet. Now it's getting better, to our first point. And I want to talk a little bit about some news-making headlines just recently. It was the Frontier Airlines saying that they're going to get rid of live agents and do everything through automation and chat and whatnot. And this sounds kind of revolutionary. It's not. I mean, Zeus, you and I call the airlines, they answer because we have status, but most airlines are making it very, very hard for people to call. And I don't believe that they're going to be able to eliminate human operators. I believe that there's a point of diminishing returns with automation on certain issues that get too complicated. So when they say they're going to get rid of the contact center, I suspect that they mean they're going to get rid of inbound calls, and you have to start with a chat, and maybe at some point there's a way for them to call you or something like that. But I just don't think we're there yet where we can solve every issue with an AI solution or even a chat solution.
Blair Pleasant and I had a long discussion about the Frontier thing on LinkedIn, and I actually think they will get rid of them. And my feeling is, you pay $39 for a flight, and with that, where you're limited to a middle seat and no carry-on bags. Let me tell you something: you don't deserve to talk to somebody at that price point. So if you really want to talk to a live agent, book another airline. If you're willing to live with the crappy Frontier service, then live with no agent, right? It's a matter of economics for these guys. So I suspect if in fact, I bet you if you ask most Frontier flyers, if they were to lower their ticket prices and get rid of the live agents, most people would take that deal. So
the problem with that logic is it assumes that the problem is always the customer. But sometimes the vendor screws up. They charge you the wrong amount of money. They lost your luggage. They screwed up. And at that time, customers want to call and get something resolved. They need something resolved. And they're usually not repeatable, common things that a chatbot's going to be able to help with. And so it's one thing that I want to call and change my seat, or I want to change my flight. I'm a high maintenance customer. And you're saying, no, we don't support high maintenance customers. There's some merit and logic to that, or a low frills airline. But when they mess up, you got to stand by your brand, or you lose your customers. And you're right. Customers are calling Frontier not because they want to talk to an agent, but because they just want to get somewhere. And if they can do that on their own with self-service tools, they'll do it on their own. But sometimes things just don't go right, and that's where you lose where the wheels fall off the plane. Fall off the plane.
Yeah, don't say that with airplanes. All right, Frontier, well, the gauntlet's been thrown down. Let's see if you can actually pull this off.
I think another trend that we're going to see continuing into the future, near term, is the consolidation of the enterprise communications industry. This year, we saw a couple players disappear. We saw Star2Star get acquired by Sangoma. We saw Fuse get acquired by 8x8. I think that we're going to continue to see vendors disappear for various reasons, mostly because of the growth of Microsoft Teams. We've never had a vendor this large in the enterprise communication space in terms of market share since Bell, really, since the Bell system. So as one vendor gets much, much bigger, that's putting a lot of pressure on other vendors to consolidate.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think we might have a couple of little vendors perhaps here or there, like a Star2Star or Fuse, but for the most part, I don't think we're going to see a lot of consolidation because I'm not sure the industry's ready for it yet. So if you take all the vendors at the numbers at face value, which I don't, but let's say you do, right? The WebEx 7 million seats and Zoom 5 million seats and stuff like that, and add them all up, you're getting like 20, 25 million seats, right? There's 400 million business desktops, which means there's still 370 million and change desktops that haven't moved to the cloud, which is actually a pretty shocking number. And so I think from that regard, consolidation is used to grow share or add capabilities, right? And I think most of the vendors have their roadmaps laid out from a product perspective, which means you wouldn't acquire, like I said, there might be some acquisition for innovation, like a Unifor or something like that, right? Bringing in conversational AI. But for the most part, the acquisition from consolidation, I just think we're too early for that yet. I remember predicting that in the old TDM days, and look how long it took, someone like Rich McBee to come around and do that roll up that Mitel did. We were like years into the VoIP cycle before they started rolling up TDM, and I think we'll see something similar here. I just think there's so much opportunity out there that for seats that have yet to be converted that I'm not sure we really need to acquire yet.
And our fifth trend that we wanted to identify is one that we actually disagree a little bit more on, but I'm pretty excited about what I've been calling UCaaS Mobility 3.0. And this is addressing a secret of the industry that we don't like to talk about, which is that OTT apps don't work particularly well on smartphones. They work great on desktops. They work great at home networking. But when you're out in the driving around or in a mobile environment, OTT doesn't work well. I know that my OTT setup, it rings late. I don't have time to answer necessarily. I had a lot of calls where it's a bad connection, and I say, let me just call you back on my native cell number. The reason it works better on the native cell number is because it has a higher prioritization, both the wireless part and the wired part within the network. And so what I call UCaaS Mobility 3 is this concept that the cellular providers are now providing native UCaaS numbers on the smartphone. We're seeing this from Microsoft. They call it Teams Mobile. We're seeing it from Cisco. They call it WebEx Go. RingCentral has a few partnerships with AT&T and Vodafone that are offering this. InReach out of Europe is offering this. And so this is basically a native UCaaS number on the smartphone. It's one vendor instead of two vendors. So the IT decision makers having to make a cellular decision and a UCaaS decision. So now they get one vendor. I think this is going to be fairly significant. I think it's going to be fairly disruptive. I don't think a lot of end users quite understand the value proposition here yet, but we're seeing this starting to roll out, and I think it's going to get very big in the next in 23.
Yeah, that was also your prediction at UC Expo this year, and I've thought about it since, and I think it's a nice feature. I don't necessarily think it's as big as you think it is. I can't tell you how many apps I've got on my phone that do telephony now. And I actually think they work okay, right? They work well enough. And so I do get a lot of inbound calls coming in on those things. Sometimes they are actual pure app-to-app calls, right? So there's actually no number being called. But I've thought about this. I'm just not sure that I would need a second SIM provision on my phone. So we'll see how it plays out. I do think there is some value in it for certain verticals. Especially when you want to own that number. But I think for your average common worker, the over-the-top app works just fine. So I guess we'll see next year how well those things are adopted.
Well, that wraps up our 5 trends coming out of 2022. Happy New Year, ZK, and we hope to see you all, or I hope you see us all, on future videos next year.
Happy holidays.